perfect, matching patches over here. So maybe I'll address the obvious. You can probably notice there's something on my face. So I have a bit of a connective tissue problem, so I'm in the middle of getting a few surgeries to correct that. So my vision will be improved and I can make it around by myself. So I wanted to do a special thank you to my friend Jillian Creech, who's at the back. She's also a treasurer for the St. Albert EDA and is just an awesome volunteer and friend. So I just want to thank her for making the drive, because obviously I can't drive. So thank her for that. So what I thought I would do, so we have about a half an hour, I think, is that correct? Half an hour? So I thought I'd do is just chat for a little bit, and I find the best way to, just to interact is just to do questions and answers, if that works for you. So I can speak for a few minutes, and then hopefully we can talk about whatever topic that you would like to talk about. Is everybody okay with that? Okay, excellent. So my name is Marie. I am the MLA for St. Albert, and as was said, I have been the MLA for 10 years. And I think when you said animated, that means swear a lot in videos, which I do. Not gonna lie about that. But so yeah, as you can imagine, being an opposition MLA these days is a little bit challenging. So I want to tell you a little bit about what's gone on in the last year. We've had a really busy year with getting a new leader and all of the things that come along with that. And then I'll tell you a little bit about the portfolio that I am responsible for, which is disability supports, because it's really, I like to describe it as, it's even worse than a dumpster fire. It's like a dumpster fire in a disaster movie. So it's a really bad situation right now in Alberta. So let's talk a little bit about where we've been. So as you know, losing Rachel as our leader was a big loss for us. I think that we have all worked with her for a long time. Some of us maybe knew her father as well, and her legacy is amazing. And so like any organization, it's tough. We went through a lot of changes. We went through a really exciting leadership race. I'm not sure what your numbers were out here. I know in St. Albert, we actually doubled our membership when Nahed got into the leadership race. So we saw our numbers just explode. And so I don't know what that was like for you here. I imagine you had a fair amount of interest here too. So what we saw was a lot more attention. Now with any organizational change, when you have a new leader, they're gonna bring in new staff and new ideas and new ways of doing things. And we've had a number of by-elections. So it's been a year of us learning each other and learning, how we manage our work and what our expectations are. And I think what we arrived at really quickly was that our main goal, all of us together, every single one of us, was winning the next election. And we know that there are all kinds of dumpster fires all over the province, but the only real way that we repeal the really dangerous legislation or amend legislation or get rid of really dangerous things that are happening is by replacing them and firing them democratically. So I think we all, I know when it sounds really simple, but that is the place that we all arrived at. We had to all agree that our focus is, we tend to be real policy wonks in the NDP. Probably there are some policy wonks here too. We tend to get lost in the weeds sometimes with our policies and our ideas. And I think what we decided was, as a caucus as a whole, as an organization, was that we need to look beyond some of the individual policies and look at some of the bigger issues. And I was so happy to hear you talk about Nahed speaking to that, because he's pretty inspiring when he starts speaking about the future, because his vision is better is possible. We know it's possible. So been lots of changes for us, lots of exciting changes. Nahed finally has a seat in the legislature, so we go back on October 23rd for the fall session, and you will see for the first time MLA Nahed Nenshi, who's also the leader of the NDP. So you may also have noticed that our legislative calendar got a lot shorter recently. So Danielle Smith doesn't like accountability, as you well know, and so she has shortened the sessions, both of our fall and our spring session. So she's decided less days are more important, because I think she's afraid of what's going to happen with our new leader. So I'm excited. I think we're just all going to bring popcorn for the first week and just watch. But I'm very excited for what that's going to be like. What I have come to learn about Nahed over the last year or so is he's brilliant. He's a brilliant man. He is, but he's a really honest, down-to-earth sort of person, and he's really genuine in his vision. It doesn't sort of stray. So he's always very focused on the same things, which I appreciate very much. He has, he's taken on, imagine taking on a new job where you've got like 38 people that are, type A personalities, uber competitive, and just saying, hey, I'm your new leader. And I can tell you he's done beautifully, because he's a good good listener. He interacts with people and listens. And I think one of the things for me, I represent a community that's not one of the big cities, very much like you all out here. I represent a mid-sized city, which is St. Albert. And I felt like some political parties tend to really focus on the big cities, like Calgary and Edmonton. That's where most of the seats are, and you really do need to win most of your seats there. But I felt like, we didn't always understand the difference between rural and remote or small and mid-sized cities, that our needs and our goals are very, very different. And I get the sense that NAHED understands that deeply, but not just understands that, but is doing the work. Now, this is no negative sort of finger pointing on the previous administration of the New Democrats. We're just evolving, and so I believe that we all stand on the shoulders of the people that came before us. So I'm really encouraged by what is being built, and I'm encouraged that we're reaching out into other communities. So that being said, I'm going to switch over to an area that I know a little bit more about, and then we'll just maybe have some questions. So I'm responsible for the Ministry of Community and Social Services. So I don't know if any of you hear of Jason Nixon? Yeah. He's lovely. Yeah. He's about a 6'9" person who is responsible for community and social services for the UCP. And none of this is personal. I don't know him on a personal level. I'm sure he's quite fine. But in terms of his politics, I think they suck bad. And I think they represent or reflect his leader, which also sucks really bad. But things right now in the disability services are very, very bad and about to get worse. And I'm not just saying that because I'm partisan. I'm saying that because I've watched disability supports for decades. It's been what I've done for the majority of my adult life. And so when I tell you that things are going to get very serious and very bad very quickly, they really are. So what the United Conservative government has done, what Danielle's government has done, has decided these programs for people with disabilities are not sustainable, and we can't continue like this. So instead of cutting like core benefits, let me give you an example. AISH, for example, is a core benefit of $1,901 per month. So if you are eligible for AISH, and it's quite a process to go through, so you have to prove with medical proof and with some other assessments that you are permanently disabled. There is no remedial therapy of any kind that will improve your situation, so that you are permanently unable to support yourself financially, and you've demonstrated that through a medical assessment and some other things. It can take up to a year to go through that process. It often involves an appeal that is not successful. It's an expensive process, and it's tough. And there's about 77,000 people on AISH right now. I would suggest they're probably reviewing 1,500 applications a month. So there are over 1 million people with disabilities in Alberta. Only 77,000 are AISH recipients. So it's not a big portion of the group of people with disabilities. But the reality is, if people need AISH, they're there for a reason. So what the UCP has decided to do, instead of cutting the AISH benefit, because they like to say, oh, AISH is the most generous in the country. That's actually factually incorrect. But what they've done is, instead of cutting AISH, they said, well, we're going to create a new program, and it's going to be awesome because everybody that's on AISH can work. It's going to be great. All these jobs, it's going to be fabulous. So in July, they're going to take all 77,000, there'll be more by then, and they're going to move them to a new program they call ADAP, which some of my friends like to call a dumbass program. Sorry, I don't have very good peripheral vision. A dumbass program, somebody called it a death-inducing program, or I don't know, something like that, but pretty creative. I like the dumbass program because I think it is dumbass. So what they're doing is moving everybody to ADAP and saying, it'll be good though, because you'll be able to work and keep more of your employment income. What they don't tell you is they're also going to reduce your core benefit by $200. So you'll be able to work, earn more money, but they'll reduce your income, and it'll likely reduce your health benefits too. Now that's fine for some people that can find work, but if you have a disability of any kind, you probably are well aware of the fact that unemployment rates for people with disabilities are about twice that of their non-disabled peers. And the UCP, and I would venture, not just the UCP, I would say the last governments for the last 20 years have failed in creating really successful pathways to employment for people with disabilities. I'm not just talking about supported employment, I'm talking about employment opportunities. I can tell you for a fact the government of Alberta does not even keep stats on students with disabilities graduating post-secondary. They have no stats to tell you 6 months or a year after graduation have any of those graduates found employment or maintained employment. They don't save apprentice seats for people with disabilities. There is literally no tracking. There is no mechanism to create and count the number of jobs that we're creating for people with disabilities. Now, it's not just going to be a few jobs here and there, like, a guy at McDonald's or a guy at ANDP or maybe someone at Superstore. I'm talking thousands of jobs that we need for people to be able to be successful on this new program, and that's not happening. So I'm very fearful that the poverty of people with disabilities is going to get a lot worse. That's just one problem. The other thing is there's 2 programs that help pay for staffing so people can live and work in the community. And what we've seen since 2021 is they're hiding the wait list. So we know that there's probably tens of thousands of families waiting for services, but they're not getting it. And we don't know what the number is because they just hid the number. There's lots of other things. You probably heard about them clawing back a $200 benefit. So the federal government decided that people with disabilities that are working age, so 18 to 64, that earned under $23,000 a year would be eligible for this extra $200 that would help them ease some of the poverty related to disability. Because, equipment's expensive, medication copays are expensive, all those things. And so people right across the country got it starting in July. Here in Alberta, Danielle Smith said, Aisha's generous enough, we will take that $200. So she did, she took it. But to make things worse, there's a lot of paperwork involved to getting that benefit. And the paperwork costs were anywhere between $200 and $500, I've heard now. And so people in Aish don't have extra money to pay this. So there's thousands of people that have not applied, and she set a deadline of September 5th. If you don't apply, if you don't prove that you've applied, we're taking $200 off your check anyway. So now we're seeing thousands of people losing $200. A lot of people didn't even understand they had to do that. So things are very bad. Things are going to get worse because they are blowing up disability supports. They feel they're too expensive, they're not sustainable, which is ridiculous when you look at a program like that. What will happen when you increase poverty with this group of people is you're going to increase homelessness, you are going to increase food bank reliance, you're going to increase the likelihood of public unrest all over the place. It's going to get worse. We've seen it already, right? We see poverty increase, we see homelessness go up. So it's a bad situation. We expect in the fall, we go back right away in a couple weeks to the legislature. I expect they're going to jam a lot of stuff through. They have a long legislative list. But they've shortened the days that we're there, so she likes to pass motions that cuts off debate. There's 87 of us in that house. All of us should have a chance to speak on every bill, but she doesn't allow us. So what she'll do is bring in a motion to clip us off at 60 minutes. So that only lets a few MLAs speak. And so this is what she's been doing for years now. She's cutting off debate in the legislature, outside of the legislature. They're one of the most corrupt, incompetent, secretive governments I've ever seen. And at first I thought it was going to get better somehow, and it just doesn't. It just gets worse. It's like a bad movie that you're watching on Netflix about, government conspiracies. I've never seen anything like this. For them to blow $600 million on a health scandal, and they don't even bat an eye. They had a war rooms, $120 million a month going after Bigfoot. They blow money. They are now funding private schools, building of the building actually for a charter private school. All kinds of things are going on. They're spending billions of dollars on things that are not important to Albertans. And at the same time, they've blown up healthcare. We now have 4 ministries instead of 1. Nothing is getting any better. Wait times are worse, and it goes on and on. So like any politician, I said I wasn't going to talk for very long, and I did, because that's what we do. We blah, blah, blah. So I'm going to stop right there, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. I'll do my best. If I can't find a number for you or an answer for you, we'll get back to you. I also want to encourage your EDA. If there's ever anything that our EDA in St. Albert can help with, we'd be happy to help. We went through serious growing too. We started at first in 2015 with 3 of us. We worked really hard. Sorry, this is really hard when I can't see this way. We worked really hard to bring in volunteers. As you know, it's tough, right? To get people to join you, to get people to donate, to fundraise, and all of those things. But it can be really rewarding, as you all know, being here today. And I know that there's some momentum coming. We need to change what's going on in Alberta, and the way we do it is one seat at a time. So I'm thrilled that there's so many of you here. We've been to lots of meetings where there's a fraction of the number that you have here. So good on you all, and good on you all for organizing early, because I believe we're going to go early for an early election. And yeah, so that's what we're doing as a St. Albert EDA. We decided that we're just going to get ready. So we're in kind of pre-election mode, and we're working really hard that way. So I will stop, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.